Bruce. Obviously, there's quite a few topics at the moment flying around where people have got very strong opinions on. Can I ask what your personal opinion on the FOBT sort of dilemma is at the moment? What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I think that any business or any sport or any organisation that finds itself a kind of hostage to what happens with the triennial review can't feel particularly good about themselves, and you know, it's a time of concern for those that are, and I'll be absolutely frank here. You know, the Racing Post is one of them. You know, we obviously sell newspapers into betting shops. The more betting shops there are, the more we sell, and you know, conversely, the fewer there are, the fewer we sell. So, you know, it doesn't stand to do us any good. But at the same time, you know, you have to accept that if these machines are proven and that the evidence says that they're causing significant social harm, and the evidence obviously, you know, needs to be slightly more substantial than a newspaper campaign, then they need to be limited accordingly. I don't think anyone who's remotely sane or responsible or has any kind of, you know, moral sort of, you know, sense, if you like, can argue against that. So look, if the limit needs to be 20, it's 20. If the limit needs to be 2, it's 2. Everyone has to live with that. Racing has to live with that. Bookmakers have to live with that. You know, a lot of boats have risen with the FOBT tide, and they're going to have to see how they cope when they fall with that tide. I think from racing's point of view, which is how we've really been reporting this, it is a big worry, because if you look at prize money, it's the fuel that keeps the whole industry running. It's the thing that enables trainers and jockeys and to earn a living, and for owners to be engaged with the sport. And if prize money goes down, and don't forget, it got a huge boost recently when the offshore levy, for which racing did so well to broker, when that kicked in, that gave prize money a massive lift. That could be eroded, you know, almost entirely, that boost, by a £2 FOBT limit. But you know, we have to accept that and move on, and we'll see where we go with it. But I don't think anyone should underestimate the importance of the issue in terms of racing, and what it might mean. But like I say, at the end of the day, if the evidence is there that these things need a very, very hefty cut in the maximum stake, then that's what needs to happen, because, you know, ultimately you have to, you know, social responsibility comes above all else, I think.
You mentioned prize money. There's been a lot of criticism from some quarters that there's far too much racing. Would maybe that not be, you know, the answer, to have less racing, more prize money, and focus on that?
I don't think less racing and more prize money go hand in hand. I mean, I think that, you know, you need to have there's an optimal amount of races and fixtures that take place in order to generate the betting turnover that fuels prize money. So I'm not sure that having fewer races is necessarily going to help in that sense. I mean, I do think that if prize money does take a big hit as a consequence of what happens with the FOBTs and the consequent loss of media rights revenue for the sport, that it's going to put a lot of strain on the horse population. And I think that's a big worry. I think the two big challenges the racing industry faces is to retain owners, and also to retain stable staff. I mean, that's an acute issue that is, you know, going to come to the surface very soon, regardless of what happens with FOBTs, I think.
So how would you regard the health of the horse racing industry now compared to like 10 years ago?
Stronger, definitely. I mean, you know, if you look at what's happened to racing since 2001, when basically Gordon Brown made the changes to betting tax, racing has definitely benefited from that. And I think, you know, there's been some good work by racecourses to boost attendances, albeit most of them are on the back of, you know, a Rita Ora concert rather than necessarily a Grade 2 handicap. But, you know, there are challenges ahead. We have to make sure that, you know, the phenomenally wealthy people who invest so heavily in the sport continue to do so. And we need to make sure that betting remains a trustworthy, relevant and enjoyable betting proposition in the face of all the challenges from, you know, virtuals, from football, from everything else. So I think racing's done well. Like I say, it does face a lot of challenges, but it also faces plenty of opportunities.
You mentioned the concerts, which I think everybody would agree have been successful, at least in getting people to go to race courses. Do you think that, by and large, the race courses do enough to try and engage people with the racing once they're there?
It's so difficult, because I mean, I took my daughter to Newmarket a few years ago to see Jessie J, and the place was absolutely swarming with, you know, young kids. I mean, some of them were paying attention. I'll tell you one thing I would say about that, and he's a guy who comes in for a lot of stick, but I thought Derek Thompson was on the mic that night, and he did a really good, he got it just right in terms of not patronising the people who weren't hardcore racing fans, but also not completely, you know, overwhelming them with jargon and just, you know, the kind of mysterious lexicon that racing has. It's very difficult. I think you've just got to basically get them there and hope that some of them, while that's not their primary reason for being there, do actually see that there's a fairly fascinating sporting event taking place in front of their eyes.
Grassroots racing during the week, it's quite obvious that sort of very few bookmakers attend these days. Some places very sparse attendance. How do you see, you know, what could we do, what could racing do to try and improve its bread and butter?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? You've got kind of two very distinct types of people who go racing. You've got the people who go for an event, so to the big meetings, and then you've got the hardcore, probably mostly older people who've got the time and the interest to go to Plumpton on a Monday or whatever. I think for those people the key is to make sure their day out is as good value as possible. And I think if I look at some of the midweek entry prices, I think they're too high. I think they could do some more in terms of maybe season tickets and loyalty and that kind of thing. Because I just feel that to go and see half a dozen low-grade races, you know, on an all-weather track and to pay in excess of 20 quid to do that, I think that's, you know, that's pretty excessive. And that would be a deterrent for a lot of people who can now just, you know, go onto their mobile phone, place a bet and then click the bet to view logo, and they can do it there without needing to get a train and traipse from the station to the course. But at the same time, you know, I think that, I mean, if I get a rare day in the week and I'm able to go to Plumpton or to Fontwell or to Lingfield, which are my local courses, you know, I absolutely love it. I think it's superb, and I'm always amazed how many people there are there. So I think they're doing something right for sure. You have to also remember that those meetings are there to generate betting turnover. You know, they're not there to get loads of people through the gate. But, you know, the one thing I would say about who racing needs to attract to the courses is that in the same way that nightclubs might turn around and say there's no 70 and 80-year-olds in our nightclubs, it would be stupid to try and get them in there because people of that age don't go to nightclubs. I think if you're trying to fill Plumpton or Lingfield or Fakenham on a Tuesday afternoon, you need to look at mid-50s and upwards. Those are the people who you can convert more easily, I think, than young people. So I remember one of the more kind of risible enterprises that racing undertook was this thing which you may remember called, I think they termed it Brian and Ben, and they decided they needed more Bens, who were these kind of affluent 20-somethings, than Brians, who were slightly sort of crustier people. But I actually think Brians are the people you do need to look at. So, you know, one thing I would say about racing is that I think it's almost paranoid in how kind of introspective and how self-analytical it is sometimes. But I also think that that really intense desire to get it as right as possible does actually bear a lot of fruit. And there's certainly no complacency in the racing industry or from racecourses to try and make sure that we've got as much interest as possible. And this is where the Racing Post is happy to play a part and needs to play a part, because obviously we're hostage to racing's fortunes. What's good for racing is good for Racing Post. If there's plenty of interest in horse racing, then we hope that that will lead to plenty of interest in people wanting to interact with the sport through our products. And so we're absolutely foursquare behind any attempts to increase interest in racing in whatever form it takes.
So obviously the Racing Post is the racing industry paper, and you report the news and things. Do you think you could take a bit more of a proactive part in trying to attract more people to the races, or do you think that's not really your?
Well, no, I think it is our part of what we should be doing for sure, and I think it's something we absolutely do. If you look at our front covers on Saturday editions, which are obviously the big days and the days where there's a lot of flow of kind of once a week race goers who are extremely important. Our front pages are absolutely designed to excite and to engage and get people really revved up for the day ahead. So. It's not just that. I mean, we'll happily give editorial space to promote events that are taking place or worthwhile causes. We very much see ourselves, while absolutely an independent, media organisation. We back racing, absolutely to the hilt, and do everything we can to make sure that it's popular and stable and successful.
And just one last question on that sort of thing. You're obviously a big fan of greyhound racing. What are your opinions on the decline of that sport, and can it be reversed?
It's just so sad. I mean, when I think back to the time when I first started working at those tracks, Hackney and Catford, I think in the very first month at Hackney, there was a competition called the William Hill Lead, which was won by a dog called Ballyregan Bob. Then emerged this phenomenon called Skirlow Champ, and I remember, one of the maddest things that ever happened when I was working at Catford, the racing manager was on holiday. I was basically in charge, running the whole racing operation. I was 18 years old, and they entered Skirlow Champ for a marathon over 888 metres, one-off race. And I couldn't believe it. The place was absolutely packed. There were 5,000 people in Catford Dog Track, and it was only a small place. It was absolutely rammed. A minute before the race, the guy who operates the photo finish equipment came out to me and he says, "We've got a problem." I said, "What?" He goes, "We've run out of film." So I said, "What does that mean?" He says, "It means there's no photo finish." And this was the time when Skirlow Champ was on this magnificent winning run. It was absolutely huge. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I know exactly what's going to happen. This dog's going to come from a mile behind like it always does and join the leader right on the line. It's going to be neck and neck, and I'm going to have to try and make some sort of photo finish call with the naked eye. Meanwhile, I've got to hand time the thing with an old stopwatch. So I'm absolutely under massive, massive pressure. But thankfully, this was one of Skirlow Champ's rare occasions when he broke pretty evenly with them. He took it up with a lap to go and won by about 20 lengths. I've never been so happy. But, that was just a phenomenal day. You don't get that anymore. You don't get these star greyhounds running in front of thousands and thousands of people. And it's so sad. I did a column recently about the greyhound tracks I'd visited or been to or worked at that are no longer there. And I counted 21 of them. And it breaks your heart because they were all fantastic places in their own right. They all had their own character, their own traits, but they also had, more importantly, their own community. People who, that was their social life. They went to their local greyhound track. And to just snuff that out and to leave them, bereft of their familiar routine, their social circle, it's so, so sad. I guess the only thing I would say with greyhound racing in terms of its future that's kind of positive is that I think the sport continues to be very popular as a betting medium in terms of both betting shops and also foreign operators. I'm surprised at how much take-up there is in mainland Europe as well for British greyhound racing. I was on holiday in Mykonos in Greece last year, and we're walking through these lovely little lanes, whitewashed buildings, blue domed churches, and my wife and my daughter were looking at some handbag shop or something. I looked through the window of this building, and there was a screen with a 232 at Yarmouth on it. So I walked in, there's all these great guys in there punting on British greyhound racing. And while that exists, and while betting becomes more of a global thing, you'd hope that British greyhound racing is a product that, you know, of overseas operators and obviously domestic operators still cherish. So I think that, and my hope for greyhound racing is that it will continue to be stable, and that it's reached rock bottom in terms of the number of tracks, because there needs to be X number of tracks in order to service the industry. There needs to be X number of dogs to be able to do that. The one regret I've got is that fantastic design at Wimbledon didn't come off, because I think if they'd done that, and I think if you proved that if you provide fantastic facilities, you will actually bring back the good times, then I think you might have found other tracks either renovating themselves and becoming really good, or even new tracks opening. But I just feel that was a really missed opportunity at Wimbledon.